Welcome to Making Messes. Hi, I'm Jamie Harwood, and thanks for joining me here, in my dining room today. Today's craft is something I've not ever tried before, but I'm going to try with you. About a year ago, I was hosting a bridal shower with some friends, and the bride really loves to read. And so we decided that we were going to use kind of a book theme, a reading theme. And as I was looking for decorations, I ran across the art of book folding. Now at the time I looked at it and thought that is way too difficult. I do not have time nor the skill to do that. And so we went with other directions. But fast forward to about a week ago and I kind of stumbled on it again. And I thought, well, maybe it's not as hard as I think it's going to be. So I did some research and in fact, it's not as difficult if you stick with the really easy patterns. So what we're going to do is actually fold a book today into a heart shape. This is a pretty easy pattern that I've just downloaded from the internet. Things can get super intricate with these particular book folding techniques, such as this one. Or this one. And then look at this one, isn't it gorgeous? Well, the one we're doing today is not going to be nearly as difficult as the ones I've just shown you. So let's get our supply list ready and then we'll get started. So you don't need very much for book folding. Obviously, the most important thing is a book. This is a book that someone gave me to read, and by looking at the bookmark, I apparently got about 10 pages in and decided I was not going to read anymore. So this will be a great one. The size of the book that you need will be determined in the pattern that you download, such as this one that I've downloaded from the internet. This is just the pattern for the basic heart shape that we're going to be making. And it will tell you up at the top the number of folds. It will tell you the minimum number of pages that you need in the book. And then it will tell you the minimum height of the book. So you will need to find a book that matches whatever your pattern says that you're going to need. You're also going to need a ruler that has centimeters on it. For some reason, all of the patterns I've found and downloaded are done in centimeters. So make sure you have a ruler that will measure that appropriately. And then you're going to need a pencil. This is how you're going to mark where you're going to be doing the folds. I will probably be using, when I show you, a pen, just because it's a little bit easier to see on the pages of the book. You do want to have a book that you're not planning to read anymore, because once you folded all of those pages, it would be very difficult to unfold them so that you can actually enjoy the story once again. So let's get started with book folding. So the first step in book folding is to figure out where we need to start, because you want to have about the same amount of unfolded pages on either side of the image so that it doesn't look like it's skewed to one side or the next. So the way that we're going to figure that out is we're going to go to the very end of our book and figure out what the last page is. Now there will be some unnumbered pages, these end pages that they put in the front of the book. The back of books are much thicker, and so we're going to exclude those because they're going to fold differently and they would look differently if we included those in our folding. So we're going to go to the last page, and this is 382 is what the last page in this book is. And so we're going to write that down on our pattern. I'll apologize ahead of time. This is going to involve some math. And then we're going to go back to the front of the book and look for any unnumbered foldable pages. Again, this is one of those end pages that's thicker, so we're going to exclude that. And so there are a number of pages in this book that don't have page numbers on them. And so I have already counted how many unnumbered pages we have, and that's 15. So what we're going to do is we're going to add 15 to our 382 pages that we have, which gives us 397 foldable pages. So those are the foldable pages we have available to us in this book. Now, when you look at your pattern, as I mentioned before, it says up at the top the minimum number of pages you need in order to complete this design. Ours happens to be 216. So I'm going to write that on my pattern, and we're going to subtract that from the 397. That gives us 181 pages that aren't going to be folded. Obviously, we want the same amount at the front of the book as the back of the book, so then we're going to divide that by 2. And that gives us roughly, if we estimate, 90 pages. So you're going to want to start at the beginning of your foldable pages at the beginning of the book, and you're going to want to count in 90, which is what I've done already, and this is where we are. So you could just begin folding like this. I'm going to flip this around because I do need to be able to see the pages. Once you begin folding and moving from page to page, these are going to want to kind of move back to where they were. So what I'm doing is I'm just taking a piece of ribbon and I'm going to put it around the book. I'm just going to tie it here, and then I'm going to move that knot to the back side. And what this allows me to do is, as I fold them, I can slide them under here and it will hold the folded pages for me. You could use a rubber band if you had that. When I was practicing, I found that the rubber band tended to fray the edges because it wasn't large enough. And so this ribbon works really, really well. So in order to begin folding, what we're going to do is we're going to go to our pattern, and as you can see, it lists out, every single fold, starting with fold 1. And so for every fold, you're going to measure 2 different measurements. For instance, for fold 1, it says the top measurement is 7.1 centimeters and the bottom is 9.6 centimeters. Now, a common mistake would be to measure the top one from the top and the bottom measurement from the bottom, but you're always going to measure your measurements from the top. So as I mentioned, you should be using a pencil. I'm going to use a pen just so you can see how I do this. I'm using the centimeters. Fold 1, 7.1. So I'm going to put this at the very edge of my book, or actually my ruler has a little bit of a lip on the edge. So I'm going to go towards the edge of the page, and I'm going to go down to 7.1 centimeters, and I'm going to make a little bit of a mark. Then I'm going to go to the second measurement, which is 9.6, again from the top, going down, find 9.6, and I'm going to make that mark as well. So now, as you can see, there are 2 marks there. Now the next step is for you to begin folding, and you should be making as close as possible to a 90-degree fold. So I'm going to take this page and I'm going to fold it down to the mark that I've made. Now, the best way to get a 90-degree fold is literally just to follow your line of text, because that's straight. And then I'm just going to use my fingers. There's our first fold. Now we're going to come up from the bottom for the second fold, doing the exact same thing. Folding up to the mark I've made, following my line of text to make sure it's a 90-degree angle, making sure my folds are crisp, and that's our first fold. Now, you're not going to be able to see the marks that you've made when you're measuring, because you're really just going to see it from the front, so that's not that big of a deal. So I'm just going to move this in here, see how that'll hold that out of the way for me. And I'm going to mark off that I've done fold 1 on my pattern. So I've just marked it off, and I'm going to go to fold 2. Fold 2, the top measurement is 6.3 centimeters and the bottom measurement is 10.2. So again, taking my ruler from the very top on the edge of the page, I'm going to mark 6.3, and then I'm going to mark again 10.2. And then I'm just going to fold it down to the mark that I've made. Now you may be wondering to yourself, or maybe you aren't, but I'll tell you anyway, how accurate do you have to be with these marks? Well, try to be as accurate as you can, but there are times when between, let's say, fold 7 and fold 8, it may be a difference of 1 millimeter, which isn't very much. So is anybody going to look at your fold and say, oh my gosh, I believe fold 73 is off by 1.5 millimeters? I don't think they're going to do that. And if they do, well, tell them to stop looking that closely and just enjoy the art that you've made. So those are my next 2 folds. Just going to tuck it under, keep that out of its way. Mark off that I've done fold 2, and I'm going to go to fold 3. Again, fold 3, the first measurement is 5.8 centimeters, and the second measurement is 10.6 centimeters. So again, I'm going to fold those, or excuse me, I'm going to measure those from the top. So 5.8. Here's our 10.6. Just as you did before, folding down to the mark that you've made at a 90-degree angle. And up from the bottom, up to the mark at a 90-degree angle again. Now this is what you're going to continue to do. I'm going to pull these out so you can see them. As you can see, they're starting to make a little bit of a pattern. Not one that you can recognize yet, obviously, but that will become more apparent as you go through. So I think what I'll do is speed this up a little bit, do some more, and then I will finish up folding and show you what it looks like. Okay, so I've completed about half of the folds, and as you can see, the heart is starting to take shape a little bit. So I've just followed the pattern and continued folding on my 2 marks. So I'm going to put my ribbon back on because it's holding my pages really nicely. And then I'm going to fold some more. Show you just a couple where I'm at. I'm on fold 50, which is 4.9 for the first measurement and 17.4 for the second. So I'm just doing what I've been doing this whole time. Folding the first one, folding the second one, and then tucking it under. I'll continue folding until the very end, and then I'll let you see what we've done. Okay, I'm going to cheat just a little bit and jump to a book that I've already folded with the pattern that we were using with the heart pattern. And so this is how it turned out. Isn't that pretty? 108 folds, not hard at all to do. Again, this was a pretty simple pattern, and they can get pretty intricate, as you remember from the ones I showed you at the beginning of the video. And what I really like about this is that this is a great way to upcycle books. For instance, this was a book that I just really wasn't all that interested in and probably wasn't going to read. And so instead of ending up in a landfill, it ends up as art. You could display this pretty much anywhere you'd like to. You could put it on a shelf just as it is, or you could put it in your bookshelf facing outward. You know, when you have a bookcase, a lot of times you have kind of some end areas where you don't have enough books to fill that shelf. Well, this would be great sitting at the end of one of those. And I'll have some pictures of that at the end of the video for you to see. So that is book folding. Okay, well that was the art of book folding. It wasn't terribly difficult. This simple pattern, which I downloaded from the internet, was about 108 folds, and it took me just about an hour. You can go on the internet and search for foldable book patterns, and you will not believe all of the different ones that you can find. Some of them are free, some of them they would like you to pay for them. Some of them are pretty intricate, so I'm sure that's why they're charging for them. As I mentioned before, you can display this pretty much anywhere. Here it is on a shelf in my home. And here it is in one of my bookcases. I really like the way that it fills that end space on a shelf that doesn't have enough books. Instead of just an empty space, now I have a little bit of art in there. Well, thanks again for joining me here on Making Messes. I hope that you go out and make some messes of your own. be safe, be well.